storytelling has predated the written language thousands of years, right? So the story of the oral traditions of passing on stories and through stories that we tell around the campfire, this predates the written language, right? We developed writing as a tool. Writing is a tool to communicate, just like painting is, dance, art forms. We developed that so that we could tell stories.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Demi Learning Show. This is Gretchen Rowe, and I am so excited to have this conversation today with Matthew Young, the creator of Read, Write, Create. I have to tell you, I'm a grandma. I have a granddaughter who's 9 and is very, very creative. And Matthew and I met last summer at an Atlanta homeschool conference, and I fell in love with the way he presented materials. My granddaughter loved his materials so much. She has now gone on to sit down with her dad and learn how to make her own book after getting a writing book from Matthew to figure out how to be creative. And so now she's in the process of binding her second storybook, which I think is pretty wild. You'll find out more as Matthew and I talk together today. I'm really, really excited for us to have this conversation. Shall I allow you to introduce yourself, kind sir?
Well, thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate that. I'll make one correction. I'm the co-creator with my twin brother. I am a twin,
True.
and
This
my
is
brother,
true.
yeah,
I'm sorry. I should have included Jared in
that's
that.
all right.
So
That's all right. So I don't want to take all the credit. So we're kind of a duo. We do everything together. So he is kind of the lead designer, designs everything that we do, and then I kind of come up with crazy ideas and he brings them to life. And so like the set behind me, he designed a lot of what you see here. This is the Read, Write, Create Clubhouse, we call it, that I'm standing in. So I do a lot of my lessons, my live lessons from here and stuff like that. But yeah, just a kind of a brief introduction. We're actually filmmakers by trade. We've been filmmakers for over 20 years now. And we've always had a toe in the education space. We actually used to work for churches. We worked in the faith-based world. We started doing live shows at churches, and then this one church just hired us to make curriculum for them randomly, and we're like, okay, we'll try that. And so we learned everything we could, and we started making small group curriculum for children's ministries. And then that's how we eventually came to work with a guy named Phil Vischer, who created VeggieTales. He kind of hired us. We made a bunch of content for him when we were in the early part of our 20s, early mid 20s. We made a bunch of content for a streaming service he had at the time called Jelly Telly Media. And this was what he started right on the heels of VeggieTales going bankrupt. And I don't know if people know this, but VeggieTales went bankrupt in the 2000s, early 2000s, and he started this new company. So we worked for him for a few years, kind of perfecting our craft as filmmakers and storytellers. And then we went on to just make documentaries and other feature films. We've done a lot of commercial work for companies in our area. We're outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And so that's kind of our background. We've always been creatives, always been storytellers. And then when COVID hit, we had met a man by the name of Stan Tucker, who was a teacher, and he just had a heart for literacy. And he wanted to design a program called Share Your Story, which would teach kids how to write books. And so we teamed up with him to make a simple children's show. And it's still around. It's called the Very Airy Library. You can look it up, veryairylibrary.com. And this brought us back into that children's production world, but it also brought us into the education world. Specifically the literacy education world. I won't get ahead of myself because I'm sure you have leading questions that you want to ask, but that kind of got us to where we're at today. And I can go into a little bit more depth into that in a minute, but that's just kind of a broad overview of who we are.
So now what you guys are doing is still full-time on the creative tip of the spear as
Yeah.
far as creating, but you're creating for audiences who are learning the process of telling their story. So tell me a little bit more about that. How did you make the switch from being content creation to really kind of what you're doing is your content collaborating, but you're pulling content out of kids?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think we've always had a heart for the instruction side of it. I've always loved teaching, loved sharing how we make stuff. So it's always been a passion. It's always been on our hearts. And I think going through the process with Stan when we made the first curriculum for him, we were sort of just helped him go through the design and did all the work. It kind of birthed in us that desire to do more with it, to teach the art of storytelling, to teach the art of creativity. I say it's how do we develop and get ideas in our heads, and then how do we get those out of our heads and into the world. And so we developed this sort of just business, this company, which is Read, Write, Create, around those ideas. I say we make tools to tell stories. And so now, over the past few years, we've developed not only products that we sell in stores, like toy stores and bookstores and
Hmm.
gift shops. We have these cool kiosks and we sell all kinds of stuff that just inspire kids to make things like your granddaughter has. But then simultaneously, I started developing my own creative writing curriculum that I teach. So I teach creative writing workshops to kids ages 8 to 14. I also teach teenagers. I use some different stuff for that, but my 8 to 14-year-olds, I teach creative writing. I call it my creative writing trilogy. And I teach those right here. You can physically come to our studio and take workshops in this crazy classroom, or I do it online as well. So I have kids all over the country that I teach as well. So yeah, we just fell in love. We love telling stories. We love the creative process and whatever medium form that takes, and that's where Read, Write, Create sort of came from. That's how I'm here right now with you.
Well, I think it's terrific because we need to inspire the next generation of storytellers. There is something so rich about being able to fully enter into a story. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I think with the advent of these things, these digital devices, uh, kids don't have the same connectedness to stories that they did. They don't have to be creative because they can be passive consumers of this content.
Sure.
And the, our world exists in its rich depth and breadth because we had that creativity. And so I would like to see that fostered into the
Yeah.
next generation.
Oh, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. Um, we kind of think that creativity is more important than it's ever been. The ability to learn how to create in general, because creativity is medium agnostic. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter what field you go in. The ability to generate ideas from nothing, to formulate them, to and then to take those ideas and to be able to communicate them into the world in whatever medium you choose, that's a skill that can be developed. It can be honed. I was giving a talk the other day on writing. It was I think the title of my talk was, develop a love for writing before the red pen comes out, right? So somewhere along the lines, we sort of put the cart before the horse, and what I mean by that is we decided that writing comes first, and then creativity and storytelling follow. And so one of the things I pointed out is that storytelling has predated the written language thousands of years, right? So the story of the oral traditions of passing on stories and through stories that we tell around the campfire, this predates the written language, right? We developed writing as a tool. Writing is a tool to communicate, just like painting is, dance, art forms. We developed that so that we could tell stories. And a lot of times what we see happening, especially with young kids, is that through testing, through rigorous testing, whatever it is, standards, whatever it is, we say, well, that grammar's not right. The spelling's all wrong. You're not going to be able to tell stories if you don't get this right. And that's simply not true. That's why when I teach, I tell kids, I tell parents, I don't teach grammar. I don't teach mechanics. I don't teach spelling. You don't want me teaching your child those things because I'm terrible at those things. What I do is I teach kids how to create, how to come up with ideas, how to formulate those ideas, and how to put those ideas onto paper. And so my goal when I teach, and my goal to communicate to other instructors, is that creativity, first and foremost, is about creating a safe space for the student, the child. And what I mean by safe, I don't mean like literal, like, put shields up. I mean a safe space where they can be weird and crazy and come up with ideas and not feel judged that their spelling's not right, that their grammar's not right, that their idea doesn't meet some sort of preconceived standard that we have. So if we can create a safe space for a child to just, you know, be weird, be crazy, come up with stuff, they're going to develop a love for storytelling, a love for creativity, and the writing will follow. There will be a desire to want to communicate what they're creating. And so that's where the tool of writing comes in. I went on a bit of a tangent there. I don't know.
No, you didn't, because you're singing the song of my soul. As a creative writing instructor for almost 20 years and someone who has taught from stage, we say to kids, I want you to here's an 8-year-old who wants to tell a story about an elephant. An elephant. I don't know how to spell elephant, so I'll tell you a story about a pig because I can spell pig. And we miss the opportunity to hear a fantastic story about an elephant because they're hung up on not knowing how to spell the word.
Exactly.
And that's not what we want for our children. We want them to be creative. So I love the fact that you are creating what you call a safe space. It's a space where there's no rules really,
Mhm,
as far as you can be as creative as you want to be. And that's
mhm.
really kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's the goal. That's what I try to do.
So tell me how you all do that. Tell me what happens in
Yeah.
a class when
Yeah.
you teach a class, because I have in my mind I have this vision of here's a whole bunch of kids who have learned to write what we referred to in my family as dragnet style. It's just the facts. There's a noun, there's a verb, there's a period, that's it, and no creativity whatsoever. And they're
Yeah.
kind of sitting there like this, waiting for you to
Yeah.
uncork them. So how do you
Sure.
pull that cork from the bottle?
Well, again, creating that first thing I do is try to create that. So typically, I won't have more than 8 or so kids in my group. So and they can range. They're mixed ability groups. So it could be 8-year olds, typically younger than 8. I will occasionally get us an advanced 7-year old that is, a little bit more forward thinking. Most of the time, 8 to 13, 14-year olds. Okay. And they're all in one, and they can all be in one group. So mixed ability group. The first thing I want to say to them is, or that I do say to them is, you can write everything we do here. You can draw everything you do here. It can be a combination. I am not going to stand over your shoulder. I'm not checking your spelling, your grammar. My number one goal is that when you get done with this, and I have activity books that we work through, that when you get finished with this, you have an understanding, a memory, a knowledge of what you created. That's what's important to me. No one else is going to be looking at this, but you do have to be able to pick this up a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a year from now, and be able to look at this and have an understanding of what you do. So that's what I say first. The next thing we do is we just start the brainstorm process. I have some tools that we created that I use. One of them I call story stones. They're just writing prompts on these little tokens. And all they do is have pictures and words on them. And they give kids a place to start. So I just dump them out on a table, and I pour them out on a table, and kids get an opportunity to use those if they need just an idea. Because the thing we hear the most here, I got a set right here. So they're just little tokens, like you can kind of see.
Sure.
So yeah, I just dump them out on a table. I've got a few different versions, a few different genres, and I do this for my older kids too, because the thing we hear the most is, where do I start? And I think you mentioned that. I don't know where to start. Ideas can come from anywhere, right? You could look around the room behind me and probably have an idea for 1,000 stories. What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? Where do you live? What does a typical day for you look like? What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite food? Just get them talking about things within their life, or we use story stones to say, take a look around this room and see if there's anything that sparks an idea. There's no bad ideas. But through my process, I start with brainstorming. The first thing I do is have them brainstorm 3 different types of characters. I'll show you. I got this is my character creator workbook that I designed, that I work out of. And so one of the first activities we do is we just brainstorm 3 different types of characters. They do not have to be fully developed. Is it a sci-fi fantasy character? Are you making an alien? Are you making a monster? Is it a unicorn, something from another world? You can write unicorn or write alien here, or more often than not, they just start drawing little pictures. I love to just let kids draw, just let them go. So brainstorm a sci-fi or fantasy character. The next thing I say is brainstorm a real world character. Is it a child just like you? Is it an athlete? Is it a musician? Is it a dog, like your pet dog or pet cat? And then the last thing I do is kind of my wild card brainstorm is brainstorm just an inanimate object. Take an inanimate object and I throw a big word at them. I say, we're going to anthropomorphize something. We're going to give an inanimate object human characteristics. So just pick something out of your backpack. Look at your tennis shoes. Here's an example of one of the stapler I designed. This is Chomp Chomp right here, right? He's just a stapler. So I took a stapler and made just a little character. That's a good way to start too, because there's inanimate objects wherever the chair
Sure.
you're sitting in can be a character. So ideas can come from anywhere. That's the first. So getting those brainstorms. And then at the end of that process, we take about 5 to 10 minutes there. And then I just say, circle the one that speaks to you the most, circle the one that you want to work on throughout this workshop. They can adjust and change as they go, and I encourage that. But this gives them at least a simple place to start. We haven't added any characteristics yet. We haven't done any of the details. We've just done a very broad, I'm going to make a pencil character. I'm going to make an alien. I'm going to make a student or a child. And then we go from there. So, yeah, safe space, help them
And
brainstorm
you know, one of the
ideas.
things I think that's terrific about what you're referring to as a safe space is most of the time in a classroom, there is a predetermined agenda.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
going to write about,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
some, I vividly remember one of my kids, he's now in his 30s, but he was given an assignment in a writing curriculum that we had to write about baseball. Well,
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you. The sports section hits the trash can unopened at my house. None of us knew anything about baseball. We had no interest in baseball. And here he was required to tell a creative story about baseball. There was no creativity there because he had nothing. And
Yeah.
that was such a frustrating experience. And I learned in that moment that if you can do what you're doing, where you're asking them to create the world,
Yeah.
then it's so much easier for them to enter in
Mm-hmm.
to whatever world it is that they create.
I always start with characters first. I think that takes some of the intimidation out of the process for the child. A lot of times, what you see in a classroom or the way that somebody who is not very familiar with storytelling, they'll go, we're going to tell a story today. What's our story going to be about? Right? Story comes out of an interesting character inhabiting an interesting setting with a goal, something they want to achieve. And there's obstacles and problems that get in the way of that goal. That is a story. So the first thing we got to do is we start with a character. And this takes some of the intimidation out of it for a child. They, so like I just showed you, before we tell a story, before we build a world, we're going to figure out our character. We're going to give them a personality. What are they good at? What do they struggle with? We're going to give them, we're going to figure out what they look like. Is it an alien? Is it a child? What's their style? What do they wear? What are some of their physical attributes? How do they talk? How do they move? And then we're going to give them a goal, something they want to achieve, and the problems and obstacles that are preventing them from achieving those goals. We'll find out that our personality traits create obstacles for us. Some of us are obstinate, some of us are reckless, some of us are hard-headed, some of us are clever, a little dishonest. So these personality traits dictate some of the choices that we make. So the first thing I do is I start with a character. Once I have a character, then we go to world. The next thing in I call it my creative writing trilogy. It goes character, then world builder. Once I kind of know who my character is, I can start to shape the world that they're from. Are they an alien from another planet? What's the geography of that planet? What's the climate? What's the culture of that planet? Who else inhabits that planet? Then I have them map the planet so we get an understanding of where the dangerous things are and where the safe things are and where my character's home is. So now inside their head, they have their character, they have their world, they know their character's goal. Then the stories just flow out of that. So in the third step, I teach them basic story structure, a 3-act structure that teaches them how to introduce their character in their world, which they already have, they already created, their character's goal. What does their character want? An inciting incident, which kicks off our the action of our story, rising tension, obstacles that increase in difficulty as we go, leading to the climax, to the resolution. When you start with character and worlds, the storytelling part comes naturally. And I tell people, you think about this. You cannot have a story without a character or a setting. You can have a character on its own. You can have a world on its own. You cannot have a story. So the technique of starting with story, like Pixar has this old phrase, story is king. And they're what they mean is just the script is king. Story only falls out of great characters and great worlds and characters that want to achieve something and the problems, challenges, and obstacles that prevent them from doing that.
Well, you know what else you have done here is you have created a very stable structure. You've got a structure that's a triangle here. You've got character, you've got um, you've got world, and then you've got whatever occurs in that world. And having that stable structure, it gives kids the idea to understand that you can't have one without the other two, and that's huge.
Yeah, so that's my basic technique for storytelling. And I think that process takes a lot of the intimidation out of it for the child and the instructor because I do have a very structured process for which I go through. And I think that formula and that structure makes the creative process a little bit easier on the students going through it. Um, so yeah.
So what happens with in in a typical class for you, how long are these kids there?
So my workshops have three, like I said, it's a trilogy. I do an hour and a half straight with my kids. I don't recommend that if you have the opportunity to do. So I would probably more recommend breaking it up into 30-minute sessions across one of the books. I like to give the kids lots of time to work too. Like I will pause, I play music, I'll scroll up the music while they're working, give them 10 minutes to work on an aspect whichever step that we're on. But we go hard for an hour and a half straight, no breaks. So we go all the way to the end, and I've never had an issue of kids not wanting to finish. Obviously, you got to have stamina with some of your younger kids, but and you might start to see the it wear off towards the end, but they're with me for the hour and a half. And so across the three books, you're talking about three sessions at an hour and a half a piece. When I do my Zoom sessions, I do it an hour and a half with the kids. So we go and get through that character creation. And then once we have our character, we'll do our world builder in the next session and we'll do the story writer in the next session. I wish I could have more sessions with kids, but time and cost prohibitive for everybody. But these are things that they can work on their own as well. And you will start to see that when a child gets excited about what they're making, their mind starts to run. Inevitably, when we're building that character, they're already thinking about who else is in that world. They're thinking their story is just starts going off in their head. And I always have to be like, slow down. We're gonna take some time here. If I were to put one of my activity books in front of a child and walk away, they'd be done in 5 or 10 minutes. And they'd be like, oh, I'm done. It's like, no, no, no. We're going to take time. We're going to think about this. We're going to process. We're just going to work with our hands for a little bit. And we're going to really develop these things. And those are where those ideas really start to come out when they start developing those things.
You know, one of the things that you're giving them the latitude to do, which we often don't have the opportunity to do when we're teaching creative writing, is um, Particularly if you're a parent who has a little bit of hesitancy about teaching it, you want to follow the curriculum. As someone who teaches creative writing myself, I understand, particularly if you're the parent who writes in that dragnet way, who wants just the facts. It's very hard to step away from a curriculum that prescribes for you what you want to do. But if we want creativity and we want our children to remain engaged with the process, then we absolutely positively need to maintain that creativity by pressing into their creativity. And that may be something that you haven't thought about before. Maybe it's giving them clay and having the opportunity to create their character. And once they can see what their character looks like, then they have the opportunity to tell that story about the character. The most important thing I would encourage a parent to do when you're teaching creative writing is to not evaluate your students' work too early. Sometimes as parents, we have an agenda. I've got a script, I've got this much work I've got to get through, and I need to get through it with some degree of expediency. And that expediency is the enemy of creativity. So if we can wait, if we can just pause, as a matter of fact, one of the things I encourage parents to do often is your child doesn't need to have a pencil in their hand to be creative. You know, when an executive writes a letter and has his administrative assistant type that letter up, who wrote that letter? Is it the executive or the administrative assistant? And the truth really is, it's the executive's thoughts executed on paper by the administrative assistant. And there's nothing that says that you can't be your student's administrative assistant to write out information successfully for your kids. Sit down with your child, let them create that clay object, let them tell you the story about that object. Ask questions that are creative, that keep your child in the creative end of the experience. Oh, that's so interesting. So your alien landed on this planet and there's no oxygen there. How does your alien breathe? Oh, through their feet. Oh, that's really interesting. So if they breathe through their feet, do they have eyes? Can they see? Or how do they perceive their environment? What happens when they walk through the planet they've landed on? It's always an interesting enterprise to allow your child to remain creative as they talk about this. And you can see why I really wanted Matthew to be here to have this conversation. Matthew, what do you want our guests to take away from our conversation today? What do you want parents to recognize in the writing process?
I'll speak about creativity in general. I think, we're at a crossroads. It's definitely with AI, artificial intelligence. We say, oh, well, you can just put in a prompt and come out, something comes out on the other side. AI is just a tool like anything else. I use AI I use it to fix my grammar. I use it to do so that I communicate better, my ideas better. Um, I think creativity, human creativity, my brother and I talk about this, is more important than ever. And the ability, and there's a freedom in these tools that we have now where it's unleashing creativity, where we've been hindered by some of our ancillary abilities, whether that's to actually visualize, to draw. If you're a movie, if you make movies, your ability to have the finances and the resource to produce a movie of any sort of scale, a programmer, whatever it is. I think human creativity is as if not more important than it's ever been, and the ability, the future success of a child, if they can learn how to take ideas, develop ideas, and to take ideas and to communicate those into the world, then I think they can be successful beyond whatever AI is at. AI is only going to do what we input it to do. Um, if we hit the point where AI is just doing its own thing, which I'm not saying we won't hit that for some aspect, I don't think AI is going to have anything to do with us at that point. It's just going to disappear into the ether. But if we use it in the capacity that it exists right now, the ability to create, to ideate, to imagine, to invent, to come up with cures, to new toys, new ways of transportation, new whatever. That's all creativity, right? That's all comes from the imagination, the human ability to imagine and then take those tools and to output them into the world. So if you take anything away today, I would say that the ability to encourage and to make safe space for our kids to create is as important as it has ever been.
Absolutely. And I think AI is a tool. I had a guest last summer who said something that has stayed with me ever since then. And she said, if you're using AI to step around the academic process, then you're sort of shortchanging yourself. But the flip side of that coin is if you can't think more creatively than AI can, why would someone employ you? Why would someone hire you? Why would someone seek you out? And I think that's the balance that we as parents need to strike. It's a tool, just like any other tool, just like my pen is a tool or, my chopsticks that are laying here on my desk. They're tools, but we've got to figure out how to use them and be successful with them. Before we finish, tell us your website so folks can go find out more about you and the classes that you teach.
Yeah, so it's readwritecreate.org. .com is too expensive. Uh, and you can find out about the workshops that I teach in there. You can sign up for a Zoom, or we are based in Marietta, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. We do field trips at our studio, so we do these really cool film studio experiences where kids get on their feet and they use cameras, and we teach them, how we make our shows. So that's a really fun interactive experience. If you're in the area and you want to have your child do a live workshop here with me, it's a lot of fun. I do it right here in our studio. And so it's just kind of a creative vibe. So I would say just check out our website and see what we offer. And then we do have our creative products that we sell. They make great gifts for those creative kids in your life. If you're looking for like an interesting birthday present that promotes creativity and imagination, I think they're fun, really cool, cute things to just give children to that, especially if you already have
Well,
those.
I can speak from a grandparent's perspective. They're amazing.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure how it would be received. I was so impressed with how it was received. And sometimes you give a present and in the moment they're very excited, but then it hits a shelf and it's never seen
Sure.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Knowing that she found your materials so compelling that she walked all the way through them,
Yeah.
that says something special about your products. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the hope and that's the goal. So,
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I want to thank our audience for being here, for allowing us to come into your living room, and we'll look forward to joining you again sometime in the future. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.